We are Rogue Media Sports.
Dogs are an important part of our lives, and keeping them protected is a top priority, especially against nasty parasites. That's why you gotta check out NexGard Plus, afoxolaner, moxidectin, and pyrantel chewable tablets. NexGard Plus chews provide one-and-done monthly protection that kills fleas and ticks, prevents heartworm disease. Plus, it treats and controls roundworms and hookworms. That's a whole lot of protection packed into a delicious beef-flavored, soft chew designed to make monthly dosing easy and enjoyable. So the next time you're at the vet, ask about NexGard Plus chews. They're the one-and-done monthly parasite protection you want for your dog. Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurologic disorders. Dogs should be tested for existing heartworm infection prior to starting a preventive.
With the Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card, you can earn unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases you want and purchases you need. That means you earn on what you want, like trying out that new workout class, and 2% cash rewards on what you need, like a foam roller for your sore muscles. That's the beauty of the Active Cash Credit Card. It's ready when you are, with unlimited 2% cash rewards. The Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card. That's real life ready. Terms apply. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/activecash.
It is the Doomsday Podcast. It's Mosley. It's Werder. Our producer, director, Stephen Simcox. And Cowboys with just another dominating win over the Giants. Just a staggering when you combine the two scores this season. The Giants not even close, as the Cowboys, I believe, have outscored them now upwards of
89
like 89.
to 17.
Yes.
89 to 17. The most one-sided sequence of games in a single season in the history of the rivalry between the two teams.
Yes. And right now, even though we love the DeVito family, the Giants are in a bad way. And because Ed is so valuable to ESPN, it's like today's Cowboys game, it didn't quite rise. They kind of knew. I think ESPN had a sense the Cowboys were going to roll, and Ed was shifted to a more important NFC game, which was the Vikings and the Saints, U.S. Bank Stadium. And so, Ed, I mean, you've had quite a day. You finished up that game, raced to the airport to watch the Cowboys so you'd be prepared for the Doomsday Podcast, and then got on a plane right as the game was ending, and then made it home in time to tape the podcast as we do this at about 9:15 on Sunday evening. So been quite a day for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, we went into Monday night's game last week between the Jets and Chargers, and if the Jets had won, I would have covered the Cowboys-Giants game and had a home game. But, of course, we can't count on the Jets to do anything, and they failed me like so many others, and the Chargers won the game. And so instead of the Cowboys-Giants being the late game that ESPN covered, they shifted it to the Chargers and the Lions, which was obviously a good call because that was a ridiculously compelling game. And so I went up to Minnesota and watched Josh Dobbs. You might remember Josh Dobbs. You know, Josh Dobbs went into this game today 1-9 as a starting quarterback in the NFL, and the win was with the Cardinals against the Cowboys earlier this season. Well, he got his second win, and not only that, he's the first player in NFL history to have 400 passing yards, 100 rushing yards, and no interceptions in his first two games with the team. So he's been quite a remarkable story. Replacing Kirk Cousins, traded there on the deadline. I think he may have been the last player traded this year. Josh Dobbs going to the Vikings for next to nothing, and then watching Kevin O'Connell, their second-year coach, able to win his fifth consecutive game without Justin Jefferson, the phenomenal young wide receiver the Vikings have, who's got a hamstring injury, and now win two consecutive games without Kirk Cousins and without Justin Jefferson. So they've overcome a lot of adversity, unlike the Giants. The one thing that's common between the Giants that you covered today and the Vikings team that I covered is both were starting a third different quarterback in as many weeks. So that's the parallel line we traveled in this Week 10 in the NFL. But I watched the Cowboys. I have plenty of opinions about what I saw, what we saw, what it means. So we should probably at some point in the very near future get to that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the direction we're headed. And as I was at AT&T Stadium today, and we've got a lot to share with you. Stephen, if you would please play the music. All right, it is Doomsday Podcast. The grades from, well, last week he was a little bit on the lenient side, and I cannot imagine any grading that would be harsh today. Glenn Stretch Smith will be along to share that with us, but always proud to be brought to you by Marable Homes, and Marable Homes continuing to do a gorgeous job in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, whether it's Cedar Creek Lake, whether it's Preston Hollow, Lake Highlands, Highland Park, the Park Cities area, so many different places across the Metroplex. It is Marable Homes, very, very approachable luxury homes, and that's Marable, and also a proud sponsor of my daughter's high school, the Lake Highlands Wildcats. And Ed, they have advanced to play Prosper, and they'll be that'll happen in Melissa. So very excited about that as well. But Ed, this was a dominant win for the Cowboys, and since they had that loss, that honestly against the Eagles, they seemingly they were kind of inspired by it, and certainly the reaction to that was not a reaction of, oh man, things are going poorly for us. They felt emboldened by that in some respects, and today they did what they needed to do. They just completely crushed an opponent, and fairly early on, Ed took away any hope that the Giants might have, although both teams had to have goal line stands early, but that basically only put off the beating for
inevitable.
the Giants. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
I thought my takeaway, generally speaking, is the Cowboys demonstrated, that the roster possesses an abundance of talent, especially when compared to the worst team in their division, the Giants. And they performed impressively. They won decisively. They set league and franchise records, and generally seem to amuse themselves in the process of doing so. I think the Cowboys are a formidable team at home. They have a 12-game winning streak, the longest in the NFL. They're the best team in the NFL, coming off a loss the previous week. They're 11-1 in that circumstance. They're the most dominant team in the NFL against inferior competition. They beat the Giants 40-0, the Jets 30-10, the Patriots 38-3, the Rams 43-20. The Giants now 49-17. So I agree. They did what they're supposed to do. They mostly reinforced what we already know about them, but they're still 0-1 against the 49ers and the Eagles. And when this season started, that's what it was all about. It was perceived to be a three-team race between those clubs trying to get to the Super Bowl. Now, maybe Detroit's involved in that, equation. But if you look around the league, the Cowboys had the most one-sided game, but is that more impressive than the Browns going to Baltimore and coming from behind to win? Is that more impressive than the 49ers going to Jacksonville and dominating 34-3 against the hottest team in the league all the way across the country? Is it more impressive than Texans rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud leading his team from behind in Cincinnati? Or as the game I covered, the Vikings winning for the fifth time without Justin Jefferson and the second time without him and Kirk Cousins against a division leader? Probably not. And if you look at the NFC, playoff situation, it reflects kind of what we've seen from the Cowboys. They're great against bad teams, and they failed against the best teams. It's right now the playoff situation in the NFC would be the Eagles with the 1 spot, the Lions with the 2 spot, the 49ers at 3, the Saints at 4 as a division winner, even though they're only 5-5. Seattle, which comes here the week after Thanksgiving, in the 5 hole, the Cowboys at 6 and the Vikings at 7. And of all those teams, the Cowboys have the worst conference record at 3-3, and they've lost 3 times on the road. So they're in all likelihood going to be on the road in the postseason, assuming they make it, which I do assume they'll make it.
Well, it's an interesting, you have, even after some of those devastating losses, whether it be Arizona or even in the aftermath of the 49ers game, you never wavered as far as like that they're going to go to the playoffs. Tonight was interesting, though, because as we kind of huddled around Jerry, and Jerry went about, 15 minutes or so, that was one of the things that came up, was just like how huge. I think he's a little fascinated and interested, like he enjoys this home field advantage that they suddenly have and are on this huge run. And I think it also is galling to him that what you just said, that they've likely forfeited their right to host all the way through. Because unlike other sports, especially Major League Baseball, as we've seen recently with the Diamondbacks and the Rangers, it does seem to matter. And interestingly, and Jerry's mind works in very mysterious ways, and so he'll kind of go here and go there. But tonight, when thinking about that, he kind of stopped and looked at, how he kind of locks in on one of us, and it was just a few of us around him at this time. And he basically brought up the 2007 Romo team and how he's still haunted by that. Because
they were the number 1 seed and had beaten the Giants twice in the regular season and then lost to them at home, basically because Eli Manning was allowed a touchdown drive right before the half that sort of changed the game.
Yeah, or was it a field goal? It was. He certainly drove them down
scoring
there at
drive.
the end of the half.
Yeah.
And
I think the frustration was the Cowboys had dominated the Giants in both of those games in the regular season, and now they had them set up to beat them at home and go to the championship game. And alas, they break down offensively and can't score and lose the game.
Now, Ed, the other thing that I was able to talk to Jerry about was he's the thing that inspires him more than anything, and I sometimes I think there's kind of false bravado or false protection of the quarterback, like in the moments after that when Dak was getting beat up pretty bad, and maybe for good reason, after the 49ers game, Jerry quickly came to his defense and talked about how quarterback is a reason they have a shot. And Ed, you always have good perspective and numbers that sort of back these things up. But to Jerry's eye, I just kind of brought it up like, have you seen him play at like this level? Like kind of the rhythm he's in right now. And Jerry kind of thought for a second, and then he said, no, this is probably the best I've ever seen him play. And he he qualified it with all the knowledge that he has and complimented him, but basically he thinks Dak has entered, and we can say different reasons why this may be, but he's really, really in an unbelievable spot right now. And I think that's what makes Jerry think that, while he's bummed that they likely won't have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, he also thinks this team has a shot. He always thinks that, right? But maybe he has a little bit more to hang his hat on right now because of the way this quarterback is playing.
That being said, the Cowboys are a team that, as we've talked about, all 3 of their losses have come on the road. They have generally not played well on grass. There's a huge disparity in the way they score and the way they win or lose based on the surface they're playing on. They're a team built for the stadium they play in. They're built to play fast and quick, and we saw all of that today. It's interesting that, all this, that Dak's resurrection has come in the immediate aftermath of the worst loss of his career in terms of scoreboard. The 49er loss by 42 points was by far the worst game the Cowboys have lost with Dak Prescott as a starting quarterback. And what strikes me is two things about what their response to that. First of all, it was Dak saying the next week, I decided I needed to run the football again. I need to get out of the pocket and extend plays. And that's been a real point of emphasis for him the last few weeks. And I think that has made a significant difference in the way he plays and the way they perform as an offense. And then the other thing that occurs to me, and this is more like observational, and maybe I would put it more as a question than a statement, but this is Mike McCarthy's first year calling the plays, and he, to some extent, reimagined the offense. And it was going to be about prioritizing, protecting the quarterback, and running the football. And the Cowboys have found that they can't run the football like they want to run the football. And it seems to me almost like they've gone back to what Dak was doing before. They become quarterback-centric and throwing the football all over the place again. I mean, until he went to Philadelphia, Dak had one 300-yard passing game in his previous 19 games. Now he throws for 300 against them, and he throws for 400 today. It seems to me we're back to Dak Prescott and the passing game being the focal point of the Cowboy offense, which was not Mike McCarthy's plan when the season started.
And it's even led to Jerry basically saying, when they're loading those boxes, you've got to do this, and you've got to throw open the run game. And quite honestly, right now, and again, they're beating up on bad teams, which is okay because they're bludgeoning these teams. But we'll see, because they're going to get another shot at the Eagles in a few weeks. And
I think they showed they can compete with the Eagles. They've shown over time and again, last week, that they belong on the field with the Eagles. They know how to play the Eagles. The Eagles are the team they compete with for the division title most often. They're structured to play them. They understand what they have to do to succeed against them. They have no clue about the 49ers based on what we've seen. So, if the Cowboys can play, at home against Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and Tommy DeVito, I love their chances of going to the Super Bowl. I just don't think any of those guys are going to be there.
No, and I think we kind of knew that while the Niners went into the wilderness for about 3 weeks, that they were going to find their way out at some point, and that appeared to happen today.
November when Kyle Shanahan's teams will start winning.
Yeah, and I don't think we can, the Cowboys can depend on, the Niners may be down or maybe they'll be banged up. They'll probably get the thing rolling, especially by playoff time. I think today, Ed, it would be worth noting Brandon Cooks had an enormous breakout game. I think that was a huge point of emphasis with the team. Sometimes, McCarthy will just say things, and then maybe it won't happen in the game. In this case, they said, let's make it a priority. And I think Jerry talked about it as well. And they made it a huge priority.
And Brandon Cooks demonstrated he deserves opportunities based on what we just saw him do today, right? There's no question he's capable. Now, the Cowboys had the good fortune, Wink Martindale, the Giants' defensive coordinator, is a guy who's known to blitz a lot. And the Cowboys didn't give up a sack today. And they did play a lot of man coverage. And Dak has always been a quarterback who takes full advantage of man coverage because his receivers have an advantage in that situation. And so you're right. I think one of the things, the other beyond what I just talked about with the offense, and now maybe they know how they need to play with the players that they have, and it's throwing the ball, not running the ball, that, maybe CeeDee Lamb, with what he's done the last 3 weeks, which is what he's had over 10 catches and 150 yards, first player in NFL history to do that in the Super Bowl era, three games in a row. So now you've got CeeDee Lamb in the locker room saying, hey, I'm the best receiver in football, and maybe not only is he believing that for the first time, but maybe Mike McCarthy says, hey, he might be. Like, he's up there. When you want to rely on him, when you want to emphasize him in the game plan, he delivers. Same with Dak. Like, these two guys have created a chemistry that's always been good, but has never been better than it is right now. And then, you throw Brandon Cooks into that, and what he did today, which was he had more yards than he had in this game. He had more yards against the Giants than he had in the 7 previous games combined. And, Ferguson's becoming a consistent threat and somebody Dak trusts a lot at the tight end position, which is a position he relies a lot on. So offensively, it just seems like they're kind of figuring it out, but we haven't really seen them be able to do it and win against the best teams in football. And they're going to, like you said, they're going to get another chance at that coming up here in the next few weeks. You can throw Washington in that group. They're not a winning team, but they've played well. And then you've got Seattle, and you got Miami, and you got the Buffalo Bills and the Eagles again. And the Lions at the end of the year. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for them to prove who they are. But right now, we can't say they're an elite team because they lost to the only 2 elite teams they played.
That is correct. And to your point, though, one more offensive point, or a point on the offense I wanted to make. You were talking about how they thought it was going to be lean on a great defense and then lean on the running game and kind of let Dak manage things, right? And the Pollard, after everybody begged for the last few years for him to become the feature back and become the lead back, became the lead back. He is now, these last few weeks, really just a bit player. He's a role player on the team. I mean, I'm not saying he can't make a nice contribution, but, like, if you looked at the weapons out there today, I mean, he's about fifth. He's about the fifth option, and even Dowdle was more effective. Now, of course, again, it's a blowout, but Rico Dowdle ran hard. I mean, obviously has a little bit of speed, but also just runs over people. So I don't necessarily think it's Pollard's fault, but I think this thought that Pollard's like the greatest thing, they've kind of had to move on from that thought.
Well, I think his history has shown he's incredibly effective when he's sharing time in a specific role and you're trying to get him in space in the passing game and as a runner, but somebody else is doing most of the inside runs to at least soften up the defense for him to create opportunities later in games. But yeah, I mean, they went from we're building this team around Dan Quinn's defense and we're building it around Tony Pollard in the run game. That obviously hasn't worked, and they've been smart enough to say, okay, this isn't the way we're going to win. If we're going to win, we have to change. And they did. They changed after the 49er game. There's no question about it. We're both using Dak as a runner and now emphasizing the passing game. The question to me is, can they do that against the better teams in the league?
All right, I did want to bring up Hudson Financial Group, and you can find them at hudsonfinancialgroup.com, a team of licensed property, casualty, and financial consultants, kind of a one-stop shop. Most people that hang out with us elite athletes. I don't know if that's true, Ed, but Ed was an elite athlete, played tennis in college, and certainly had some ability in that area. But Randy Hudson played for North Texas back in the well, it would have been the 80s, and I mean had a strong run with them. And again, he started this company, founded in 1988, and they handle clients in all 50 states. Asset protection, along with finding ways to reduce taxes. I'm up for that. And it's just a wonderful group. And, it's any kind of liability situation or anything you're kind of thinking about or worried about, boy, they put you at ease. It is Hudson Financial Group. And we appreciate them so much and really have enjoyed having them part of the Doomsday Podcast. Now, Ed, it is time for the man who's become sort of a benevolent grader and a man who likes to pass out. Today, who could you say something negative about on this Cowboys team? I think you would be hard-pressed to find anything. It is time for something we call Stretch Plays with Glenn Stretch Smith. It is time for Stretch Plays. On the Doomsday Podcast, Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboy scout and coach. You can also watch him Sunday nights, WFAA Channel 8. That's our local ABC affiliate in Dallas-Fort Worth. You see that all throughout Central Texas as well. And Stretch, this was a thorough beating of the Giants. I now think they've hung, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 90 points on them, right? 90 to, what have they outscored them? 49 plus 40. So about 89 to 17, I think, is the so it is just total domination this season over a team that is overwhelmed and was starting a rookie quarterback. Cowboys did what you need to do against a team like that. But, Stretch, the Dak was once again over 400 yards, throwing the ball to everybody, and they had two huge days from the receivers. Let's start with the quarterback. I would say Dak is right now in one of the best rhythms we've seen him in a long time.
Well, I don't think there's any question. I mean, you see how he's playing. You see that he's distributing the football around. You see that he's running this offense with what I would say is a real command. I'm talking about, you saw him on multiple times today, turn the protection a different way. You saw him check to some runs a couple times. You saw him continue to keep plays alive, extend plays with his feet, keep his eyes down the field. I mean, all the things, if you're going to go through and you're going to start checking boxes on quarterback play, I mean, he's doing it all right now. And I've been, I think I've been as openly critical at times when I felt like I needed to be critical of Dak. But when you look at how he's played, and I think he played well against Philadelphia, I really do. I think that he should have gotten rid of the ball a couple of times when he took those sacks late in the football game. But overall, what he did from last week to this week, I think is continue to get better running this offense. He's continuing to understand that I'm going to take what the defense gives me. I'm going to deliver the football in a timely fashion, and I'm going to run the offense the way that I think the offense needs to be run, which is with the quarterback, checking the protection, turning the protection a different way. If they see a different blitz coming from a different way, he's able to do that. I mean, Wink Martindale is a really good defense coordinator. He's been in the league a long time, and, I mean, did a great job in Baltimore. And I mean, what Dak has done to them, really in 2 weeks is something that, I mean, could scar you for a while as a football coach because they had no answers. I mean, they tried to really, kind of load the box up early. make him throw the ball. He did it. They played with a light box late in the game. They were able to run the football. He blitzed some. Dak made him pay for it. I mean, everything that they were trying to dial up, I mean, Dak had an answer for it. I think, this whole Cowboy offense right now has got an answer for. I really thought that coming out of that Philadelphia game, again, I thought he played well in Philadelphia, but I think he took it to the next level here and beat a team that he should have beat, and they went out and handled business. They didn't play down to the competition. That's what my fear is. Okay, they're playing this third string quarterback. Guy's last name sounds like he's got a pizzeria up the other side of Times Square, and they just handled business. And I think that's key. And I think that when you don't play down to your competition, it tells me that your football team is maturing. And most of all, it tells me that your quarterback is leading the offense and they're going out and assaulting the team that they should have assaulted.
Okay. I would certainly have a slice of pizza from DeVito's if given the opportunity. Seemed like a good family. They were all up there in the stands today, and they had to watch Brother Tommy take it on the chin today. He'll be back. You don't keep Tommy DeVito
Mosley,
down for long.
You'd have a slice of pizza if they called it Garcia's. I mean, I don't know why you make it sound like it needs to have that last name to it. You'd have pizza from anywhere. So.
I'm certainly not a snob when it comes to consuming pizza. That is now, to your point, Dak Prescott, according to my notes, posted a 97.2 QBR on Sunday. That's the best single-game rating by a quarterback in the NFL this season. Now, it helps to be playing against an overmatched Giants team, but still pretty impressive stuff from Dak. And I thought, Stretch, you would like this this quote from CeeDee Lamb. He said, they said, "What kind of statement are you making, CD?" And he said, "I'm the top receiver in this game, and it's no question about it. If there is, I'll see you all again next week."
You gotta like a guy that's got that kind of confidence, and that has that kind of swag. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, I thought, you shifting gears to receivers. I thought we saw what Brandon Cooks could do. I thought we saw, you saw Gallup get by and go deep, catch touchdown. I like that. I need to see those guys pick their game up, because I can tell you, as this thing goes deeper and deeper and then possibly into the playoffs, people are going to take certain things away. And guess what? If that's the case, then you end up getting in a situation where you got to pick your poison. And I think that, that's watching Dak distribute the ball around to, Cooks, Gallup, Brooks, for crying out loud, was in there, watching him still create the chemistry that he needs with the tight end and Ferguson. I think that's all. That all points in the right direction. And, I know you've heard me say this all the time. I think it's important when you look at games and when you look at players, is the arrow pointing up? And I think with everything that we saw today offensively, that leads to the arrow pointing up. I feel the same way about the running backs. I love that, Rico Dowdle got in, and, he's able to unload some of those carries off of Pollard. I've never thought that Pollard was a 22-time-a-game toted guy. And, so to be able to see, Dowdle take some of that off of him, they put Deuce in there late. I think you've got a really good running back room. And then I'm going to tell you something. I think that Tyron Smith, now I know he got the holding call against Thibodeau, but he'd kind of lost where Dak was moving in the pocket right there. I think last week and this week, when you look at Tyron Smith and how he's playing, he may be playing some of the best football he's ever played. He is so strong and so physical, and when he gets his hands on you, it's over. I mean, you're not getting out. He's like a dang python, and he doesn't have to grab outside. He can get it into your breastplate. There ain't a dang thing you can do about it. So I do think that what you saw out of the offensive line today was a cohesive unit that is, again, with the arrow pointed up, is playing better. And I thought this team today offensively, just, when you look at it, alpha to omega, I know you're a big Greek alphabet guy, Mosley. They took their business to the next level, and that's what you want to see an offense do.
Yeah, I was a Phi Gamma Delta, Fiji, so but I appreciate some of those Latin letters that you're throwing out there. Stretch, and to your point, Tyron, I read a story in the morning news Michael Gelkin had, and it was about how unbelievable his initial punch, and especially, even though he's right-handed, his left hand, when he hits you with it, to your point, I mean, it's crippling for people. And even in walkthroughs, they put some kid named Earl Bostic, undrafted, or like a practice squad guy, over there against him, and he just jacks him. I mean, he never takes a day off when it comes to that. And so one thing they're trying to do now is not practice him as much to preserve him for games. And honestly, it may be a really good strategy. It seems to be paying off. Stretch, let's go over as you get closer to. We tape this. We're getting close to TV time, and as I saw last week, sometimes they really rely even heavy more on you than ever.
Let's move on, Mosley. Let's move on here.
The on the defensive side, obviously the Giants didn't really accomplish anything. The Cowboys did have a nice goal line stand, and when the game was still somewhat in doubt. And but I mean, other than that, it was just a nice performance. Did anything stand out to you? It seemed like I did see, was it Bland that made the nice high-pointed the ball on the interception? Mm-hmm. What stood out to you about the defense?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the defense really played well. It was good to see Mosley get in there. Good to see Neville Gallimore get back in there. We know Hankins is a good player. I thought it was interesting that they were moving DeMarcus Lawrence around a little bit. They moved him over the center one time. He whipped the center kind of from a stand-up 2-point position, and that's, I mean, those are all good things that are causing, what would be the Carolina offensive coordinator are already having some issues with how he's going to match his offense up against a defense that's doing well. I thought, I hated that Lewis got dinged late. It'll be interesting to see, where they, how they go with the depth there. I mean, I still think that Stephon Gilmore's, he's still a really good player. Bland's a good player. I like how the safeties are flying around. I mean, they're very Bell, Clark at linebacker. I'm looking to get Vander Esch back because I think they're going to need him when they get to these more physical teams that are going to try to run the ball as the weather gets a little cooler and you have to go back east and play Washington and play some of those outdoor games where you're just going to have to bow up and knock knock them around a little bit, knock their offense around a little bit. I just think defensively, I still see a staff, Dan Quinn and his staff, and how he manipulates his personnel and gets them in the best position to win. It continues to show week after week. But I really thought that, seeing Mosley out there and finally getting to see him do some good things, that's a plus for this Cowboy defense. Continuing to develop that depth along the defensive line. Clark's a good player. Sam Wade's a good player. Dante Fowler. I mean, they've got so many. We sit here and just call roll. It's like you saw just guys making a lot of plays. I think they're they're really getting after the quarterback. And, I feel bad for that, DeVito kid's free agent. I mean, really he's the third-string quarterback behind Tyrod Taylor, and obviously Daniel Jones is out. But, you go play against who they put out there. And again, I can't stress to you enough how hard it is to watch the film and know you're not playing a very good football team. And naturally, your motor wants to turn down a few RPMs. That didn't happen. And so you have to credit coaching. You have to credit the head coach for getting his guys to play. But I really thought, it was a really good game for the Cowboys to go out and handle a team that they should have handled. The game was never in question. I hate that they didn't score down there on that first possession where they got stopped short. But I mean, it didn't deter from the fact that they're up 28-0 at halftime and really in complete control of the football game. So I'm talking about both sides of the ball. Didn't see a lot out of the special teams today, but really a complete game by the Cowboys. And if you're a Cowboy fan and you're looking ahead, I mean, you got to think, I think the Eagles the next 4 weeks, they've got Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, and the Cowboys again. And so if you just handle your business, you're going to be right back in this race for the NFC East, I believe, when Philadelphia comes to town. I really do believe that. And so I think Philadelphia will be very fortunate to go 2-2 in that 4-game stretch. They play at Kansas City next Monday night, and then they've got Buffalo at home and San Francisco at home, followed by Dallas here. So I think you continue to handle business, and as you're knocking these guys off that you should knock off, all along you got Philadelphia coming back in here, and I believe that'll be a big game, for what's going to be what I feel like will believe or what I believe will be, to take charge in the NFC East, because I do. I see Philadelphia losing 2 of the next 3, and that puts the Cowboys right in position for where they want to be at the end of the season. You combine that with the fact that the offense is playing better, the defense continues to play at a very high level. If you're a Cowboy fan, I mean, you got to feel good about where this team is right now.
All right, I appreciate that. Dorrance Armstrong, sack. Dante Fowler, sack. Sam Williams, sack. Neville Gallimore, and DeMarcus Lawrence. If we're going to dock anybody, it sounds like A's all the way around. Let's dock Gallimore for that late. He went low on Tommy D and was kicked out of the game. Was ejected from that ball game. All right, so that's really the only negative. Oh, by the way, Stretch, did you see that Rashaan Evans early in that game, that number 32 come? I mean, popping people. I mean, there's a guy they just brought up off the practice squad, or they brought him in from some.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they keep calling on guys to step up, and again, hopefully Lewis is okay. But I mean, if not, I mean, they've got some guys that can step in there and play, and that's. I mean, I keep saying this, but this team is moving in the right direction right now, and you got to feel. I mean, again, I've been as critical of the Cowboys. I've been as critical as Mike McCarthy. I've been critical of, when I think they need to be criticized. And when I don't think they need to be criticized, I'm going to be the first one to say, I know how hard it is to coach the game, and I know that you pour your heart and soul into it right now. This team is believing in what Mike McCarthy is doing offensively. They're believing in what Quinn's doing defensively. And we got to mention your boy, Bones Fossil, because he didn't matter today.
Old Bones always matters, though. It's good to see him over there, and he's got such a good personality. You just like him being involved. And then Stretch, if I'd like to allow you to wish Mike McCarthy a happy 60th birthday. celebrated a birthday here in the last 48 hours, turned 60 years old, and that was a heck of a way to do it, to go out there and just lay some wood on those New York Football Giants.
Yeah, and I hope he gets him one of those 3-layer birthday cakes and just get to chowing on that thing till the world looks flat. Good luck to you at 60.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have to twist his arm on that. All right, sir. Always appreciate it. We'll be watching your work tonight there on WFAA Channel 8. We'll hope Joe Trahan appears right at the beginning of that.
Go ahead and make one more mention of it so you can get the trifecta today on this show, Mosley.
Thank you, Stretch. We'll talk to you soon. There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith. He's a man who he says his piece, then he hangs up, and he walks into the night. That is Stretch Plays. All right, there he was with Stretch Plays, always a exciting part of the Doomsday Podcast. And Ed, a couple of the little jokes, just so people know what I was referencing, I made a couple of little inside jokes about his work on WFAA. Stretch, last week, Ed, was sitting up there getting ready to do his thing with Joe Trahan, and Joe Trahan was on the road in Philly, and I don't know what happened with the connection, but somebody in Stretch's ear just like literally the red light comes on and they just said, "Start talking." And so like, I mean, you've had a now 25 years or 30 years of experience doing that, Ed. I mean, but like that's not, Stretch is there as the analyst.
The analyst, right.
The expert, he's not supposed to be hosting the deal. And literally, in one of the bigger markets in the country, a top 5 market, they just pointed at him and said, "Start talking." And so and he did a nice job. He just talked for like 2 or 3 minutes, and finally, I guess somebody said in his ear, "Okay, throw it to break." And he said,
"Wrap."
"Well, hopefully we'll have Joe Trahan when we come back." So anyway, I thought that was very well done.
Harder for that than Glenn Stretch Smith. Nobody's ever been so happy to see Joe Trahan as Glenn Stretch Smith was last Sunday night.
That's right. All right, Ed, real quick on the defense. I mean, Obviously, DeVito was the 10th rookie starter this year in the NFL, which I believe is a record. And
like an undrafted quarterback.
Yeah, and, he was not quite ready for prime time. I felt a little bit for him because basically the first 2 drives, he was at his 1-yard line. He had no room to operate. And they just didn't.
Defenses in football.
And
on the road,
I felt like DiNucci. It felt like Ben DiNucci. Some of the stuff he had to go through for the Cowboys when they were using him. But DiNucci, DeVito, there's some parallels there. But it was a good performance overall, though, by the Cowboys defense. Great, interception when DeVito tried to go deep on a play. Bland high-pointed a ball. And that was a really nice play. And then I think I counted 5 sacks. I mean, again, this game was out of control pretty quickly, but you had 5 different players with sacks. So pretty dominant defensive performance.
Yeah, pretty much what you would expect with a Dan Quinn defense led by, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and a variety of other people able to, interchangeably play on the defensive line and create pressure that the Cowboys were going to dominate this game. And especially with this Giants offensive line is, even though they invested a couple of first-round picks in it, has not been provided any kind of security for the quarterback. And, DeVito obviously overmatched. I mean, great story, this week about, local kid. I think he played at Illinois and Syracuse, didn't get drafted, signed with the Giants, still lives at home with his parents, says that his family takes care of everything outside of football, that his mom makes his bed still, which I think that's a pretty weak effort out of a professional athlete myself. And he lives 9 miles from Giant Stadium and their practice complex. But yeah, I mean the Cowboy defense. Rick Goslin had this incredible note the other day, and it's still an active fact that going into this week, only 11 defenses had not allowed a 100-yard rusher. Only 9 defenses had not allowed a 300-yard passer, and only 2 had not allowed a 100-yard receiver, and the Cowboys had not allowed any of the 3. And we're the only ones not to allow a 100-yard rusher, a 100-yard receiver, or a 300-yard passer, and they didn't again today. In fact, DeVito didn't even get to 100 yards throwing the football. So the Cowboy defense was maybe not as spectacular as we would have expected in some of these other games. The offense actually had to earn their points this time at home against an inferior opponent, but they were more than capable of doing so.
Yeah,
and now they can improve their record on the road. They can improve their record on grass because they go play the Carolina Panthers, who are 1-8, the worst record in football. Even though they have, a rookie quarterback who was, picked first overall and has been the starter from the outset in Bryce Young, and he's had all kinds of trouble. He's been under pressure, when passing more than any number 1 pick in the last 10 years. So another opportunity for the Cowboys to really impose themselves on a team that's not very good. And build up. They need to win these 3 games before they play the Eagles again, and before they play Seattle. So they'll have an opportunity to win convincingly again next week. At which point they'll convince us of absolutely nothing. But they do need to win these games, and so far they seem fully capable of doing that.
All right, Ed, good stuff. Lots of travel from you. You've been all over America today. Last night, hanging out with, the land of the Saints. You were in the land of Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, but you were hanging with the Saints a little bit, and then all the way back to the Metroplex this evening. Yeoman's effort from you. And always, I just think back to those days of you being in Minneapolis with, what was that in the background? Did they have like a boat outside? Was it like a ship or something?
The Viking ship? Yeah, the
Viking ship. Was that outside their practice facility? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
Those were wonderful experiences. I got to spend a lot of time in the Minneapolis winter for a guy who lived in the South.
Yeah, and then you also spent some time in Hattiesburg as well, kind of monitoring.
Best of both worlds. Thanks, Brett. Summers in Mississippi and winters in Minneapolis. What could be better?
Yeah, and he always enjoyed seeing you. I think if ESPN sent you to check on him in Hattiesburg now, it would not be for a good reason. So try to stay away from those trips.
Well, some of the when I was up in Minnesota, a couple of the former Vikings public relations friends of mine who were in other responsibilities of the organization that came and spoke to me today during the course of the game in the press box, and one of them told me they'd just gone down for a project with Favre, and that he's mostly doing okay, but he's having some problems with his back. So I know he's having other problems, but in terms of physical problems, he's having some problems with his back.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, we both like Brett, so I hope some of this blows over, but does not kind of a dicey situation there for sure with some of that stuff there in Mississippi. Okay, Ed, good stuff. The only thing I forgot I kind of wanted to get Jerry's take on that $78 million buyout for Jimbo, since he was handing Jimbo a trophy just a few weeks ago, but I didn't get into that with him. But we talked about some other things. But I know he missed seeing you today, and we'll next week it'll be an early game. We'll do some quick reaction to it, and then we'll get ready for a big-time Thanksgiving. Ed, appreciate you, as always. All our sponsors, Randy Hudson, Hudson Financial Group, Marable Homes. Oh, my goodness, the job they do is just tremendous. In fact, the big tour of homes coming up in Lake Highlands includes the actual Marable's home, where they live. And, boy, they put they really move into the houses that they build sometimes. I mean, they believe in these things. Stephen Simcox in our Central Texas office tonight doing just a tremendous job. So Simcox Industries continues to deliver for us. For Stephen and Ed, I am Matt Mosley. Good night.
Jake from State Farm here, hanging out with Mel's Mow and Grow. Mel chose State Farm for small business insurance because his local agent is a small business owner too. So she knew how to help him personalize his policies. And now, he's rolling in the green. Like a good neighbor? Guys, I'm trying to do the line. Oh, sorry, Jake. It's all good. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Talk to an agent today.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.